Hello there, everyone, and welcome to Coffee Shop Thursday. Yeah, that time when you get together with your friends, you sit around and you talk Pittsburgh Penguin hockey in the Stanley Cup playoffs. No, you don't want to do that. Okay, we'll talk about politics then. You don't want to do that. Well, then let's talk about religion. Yeah, why not? Let's talk about Scripture. Let's talk about our gospel lesson that's coming up this Sunday from the 13th chapter of the Gospel of John. It's verses 31 to 35. Very short. But you know something that happens whenever you read a portion of Scripture for your lesson that Sunday, but you don't have any context for what's going on, you lose the power and the punch behind that reading. So very quickly, I'm going to read. It's very short. It's only 5 verses long. And then we'll talk a little bit about it. When he had gone out, Jesus said, "Now the Son of Man has been glorified, and God has been glorified in him. If God has been glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and will glorify him at once." Man, that's a little crazy. What's all that talk about? Well, we'll talk about that. "Little children, I am with you only a little longer. You will look for me. And as I said to the Jews, so now I say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you should also love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." Okay, let's start at the end and work our way back to the beginning. Yeah, the end there, we understand that. That's the love command that Jesus gave. And what's kind of interesting about it, he says, "A new commandment I give to you." And I'm going, you know what? What do you guys think? I don't think that's such a new commandment. That commandment shows up in the Old Testament too. We're supposed to love one another. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. That's in the Torah. Come on. So what's new about that? Maybe what we need to do is look at this a little closer. What's new about it is, just as I have loved you. That's how you love one another, in the same way that I have loved you. It's not adherence to a law that you have to fulfill and you have to follow and all that kind of stuff. No, you just love from your heart. You just love unconditionally. That's the way I have loved you. That's the way you need to go out and love one another. That's what makes it different. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. And that's going to be the litmus test by which people are going to know you're my disciple. There's this story I heard about an Amish guy, and a neighbor went up to him one day, and this is not me and my neighbor, okay, but this is a story I read, and the neighbor said, "Are you saved?" And the Amish guy looks at him and goes, "What do you mean, am I saved?" He said, Are you a Christian? Are you going to heaven when you die?" And the Amish man said, "You know what? I can say to you whatever I want to say, and that would make a bit of difference in the world. You know what I want you to do? I want you to go ask my banker. I want you to go ask my barber. I want you to go ask the guy that I buy my eggs off of. You ask them if I'm a Christian." Yeah, it's how you live and how you live your faith out in the world that tells the people if you're a disciple of Jesus, especially if you have love for one another. All right, we have that. Now we have this little part here too where little children, the only time that word, that particular word, it's a one word in the Greek, shows up, it's right here in John and also in the first letter of John. That's it. It's kind of unique. It's very, it's very cozy and it's very warm kind of word to use. Very intimate word. Jesus calling the disciples his little children. All right. So that's kind of cool that's there. But this whole thing about where I'm going, you cannot come. You look for me, but you can't come. He's talking about his death. You can't come. Although he does say in other places that, yeah, indeed, You will come. All right. But now let's back up just a little bit further. There's all this talk about now the Son of Man has been glorified. The Son of Man has been glorified? What do you mean he's been glorified? We think about that as Jesus rising from the dead. This is well before Jesus dies on the cross. This is the meal before he is arrested and then he goes to the cross. So he hasn't died yet. And so there's no resurrection yet. What do you mean glorified? Things have been set in motion for Jesus to be glorified. And the gospel writer records for us these words of Jesus that now that everything is in motion, it's happening. God is being glorified. God is being lifted up. And we already heard from Jesus earlier in the gospel when he said, when I am lifted up, I will draw all people to me. Jesus lifted on the cross is his moment of glory, the moment of glorification, the moment when we see what he has come to do for us, reconcile us, and put us back in a right relationship with God. That's his glorification. But this other part's a little bit interesting. We got to think about this for a minute. How you like that? That's my gourmet Lutheran coffee mug. I got my gourmet Lutheran coffee right in there. There it is. See? Good stuff. Good stuff. When he had gone out, who had gone out? Jesus? When Jesus went out, he said, no. The he refers to, now get this, Judas. Yes, Judas. When Judas had gone out, what happened right before this? Well, what's happening right then? When Judas went out, he went out to betray Jesus, all right, to snitch on him and tell the authorities where he was going to be. But guess what Jesus had just done with Judas? He had just washed his smelly feet as well as he washed all the feet of the other disciples. He had just shared in this Last Supper with them. Now, the Last Supper in the Gospel of John does not mention Holy Communion, but guess what the last thing was that Jesus gave to Judas? A piece of bread. Okay. You have that going on. And as a side note, what's interesting is immediately after these verses that we read, these 5 verses, Jesus talks to Peter and tells Peter, you're going to deny me 3 times. Okay. All this stuff happening around a scene of betrayal and denial by Jesus' disciples. And it's not just Judas, not just Peter, it's all of them. They all run away in Jesus' greatest moment of need. It's all circling that command to love, because something else that comes just before the incident with Judas and Jesus giving him the bread and Judas leaving is the fact that it says, and having loved them, meaning Jesus loving his disciples, having loved them, he loved them to the end. And then all this transpires. Oh, wow. See, what happens when you know the context of what the words have been said, all of a sudden they just jump out at you a lot more powerfully, because now this commandment to love one another, just as I have loved you, you need to love one another. It brings out a whole new meaning for us. It's power-packed with God's special love for us, the same love that we are to share with one another. And if I could, I would share my awesome gourmet Lutheran coffee with you right now, but hey, it's kind of tough to do it on this video, so go on, grab yourself a cup. God's blessings be with you, and continue to enjoy your warm, wonderful week this May, a week that anticipates the better days of summer. Blessings be with you.